Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are returning back to this game development series. So, in this series, I show you every step of the process in making a game. And I say that with a little bit of an asterisk because there is a bunch of this particular project that I have yet to show. So, just be aware that this is not exactly everything, but I like to say it because it sounds better. Anyway, so last episode, if you remember, we made some beautiful health bars, stamina, and magic bars, which when we hit play, you can see that we get, our health, stamina, and magic. And if we go to our health bar, I believe we should have the ability to control, yes, the value. And by adjusting the value, you can see that we adjust where our health is displayed. And the value is connected to a script that we made called player health and stuff. So, in this episode, we are going to be attempting to create the inverse of this script. So, this script is in charge of your health. So now we're going to make a script that's in charge of dealing damage. So what you'd attach to a sword, for example. And for some reason it's not saved. That's kind of weird. But it looks like it's all still there, which is exactly what we want. So getting right into it, once we hold on, we're going to create a new C# script. And we're going to call this damage, health damage. So this particular one is probably going to be attached only to like melee weapons. So if I was to rename that, I would probably rename this to melee damage. This would be like swords, hammers, handheld weapons that you whack somebody with. So let's discuss the differences here between what we're going to be making and kind of a typical way of making things. Typically, what you would do is you would make a sword or a weapon like this right here. What is going on? I'm like zoomed in all weird. Anyway, you make a sword like this, and then you would attach like, and then its damage would be connected to the sword itself. And then maybe like in a Dark Souls game or in Elden Ring, your stats would also affect the damage that the weapon does. So it would be the weapon's damage modified by the stats you have. In this game, the damage that we deal with any weapon is going to be solely determined on the player's statistics. So, what that, and there's a reason for that. It's because players will be able to like customize their weapons and make them look however they want. And so for me, there isn't going to be really a way to standardize how these weapons will be used and what they'll look like. And like a hammer would do one type of damage and a sword would do another type of damage, more or less. Yeah, I'm not going to have control over that. So in this game, it's purely going to be stats based. So first thing is first, and that is this this script that we have. So this script is, what are we even doing with this script? That is a good question. We, this script is going to go onto a weapon, like a sword. And the sword is going to have uh, a zone around it. And if a player goes into the zone while it's like being swung or swang, then the player will take damage. So, to make this kind of simpler to understand, let us find the prefab for this sword in particular. So, I believe I have put it in here. Yes, weapons. No, never mind, I haven't. These are all pre-made weapons that I stole off of the asset store. Um, but this process that I'm going to be showing you would work the same. As you can see, these weapons already have like a collider, like a this right here, this square green box. Anyway, we want to find our um, uh, as you can see, I'm the best at organizing. We want to find our weapon. Here it is. And in this game, the way it'll work is players can basically draw a picture of a sword and then it goes onto a vertex displacement map. And the vertex displacement map makes the sword mesh. And it'll be cool. It'll be cool. So, but for now, this is just one that I stole off the internet, which I'm not sure if is totally legal, but I already did it, so may as well use it. Actually, that might not be the best logic, but whatever. Anyway, so what we're going to do is once you have your weapon pulled up, you're going to go to 3D object and you're going to create one of these shapes. In this particular one, I'm going to do a capsule because I like capsules, I guess. And this capsule, all you really want is the collider. So this you can just sort of delete. So remove component and remove component so that we're only left with the capsule collider. We can also adjust the transform like that. And you can either adjust like the capsule using the scale or with the actual like radius and height controllers here. Personally, I'd recommend using the capsule collider things because when you rotate a capsule, let me see if I can show you it right here. If I rotate it like this and then I scale it, let me see if I can find. Okay, of course it's not doing it right now, but sometimes there can be problems when you use the scale transform scaling to control shapes, to control colliders. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So I recommend simply using the collider component. Yes, it's called a component. Anyway, the height is pretty good. So all we need to adjust really is the radius. And for now, I'm going to set this radius to be rather large, actually, a lot larger than the actual sword. And the reason I'm doing that is because the sword can potentially take up this much area. So I guess I don't need to make it that big, but you get the idea. You want your collider to take up approximately the same amount of space as your sword can, or your weapon does. And if you really want to, you can make the collider only as large as the blade. So the way you would do that is you just kind of move it up and shrink it like so. And that way it'd sort of be more detailed. Personally, I don't think that would be like extra effort for marginal gains. No point in doing it. Anyway, so also, moving on. Capsule is attached to our weapon. And this capsule we want to be a trigger. And now, let's see. As you can see, it's attached to our player. On our player, by default, we're going to want the capsule like not active. And the reason for that is the capsule being active all the time would mean that you could potentially deal damage just by sort of moving the sword into something rather than actually doing it when you're swinging or doing an attack. All right, so we have our sword and it's got its beautiful capsule collider. Now we are going to want to attach our damaging script to the empty object, or to the object, the transform, that has the capsule. So the trigger has to be with the script. And that is because we are going to make a function, a very special function called void on trigger enter. So that means whenever something goes inside of this collider, then it will activate whatever we put between these curly brackets. So what does that really mean? It means that we want to check if the other is the player. And then if it is the player, we want to deal damage to them. So in order to deal damage, we are going to be able to need to access the player health script, which is what we made last time, if you remember. So player health and stuff is what it's called. So we're going to want to go up here and make a reference to the player health and stuff script. So that would be, and this can be a private reference because I'm just going to abbreviate it to FAS. The reason why this can be private is because this can potentially, the player health and stuff script, the particular script, will be changing potentially every time we hit something. So we don't want it to be stuck to, okay, let me give you a better example. We have our player right here. But what if we had two players? And we swung our sword across both of them. We would want the sword to do damage to both of them and potentially do damage to enemies as well. And so every time this is called, this on trigger enter, we want the player health and stuff script to be like this guy's script first, this guy's player health and stuff script, and then after it's done, we want it to switch to this guy's player health and stuff. So, and I guess we could potentially keep this player health and stuff class reference as a public, but it's not really necessary. So we'll keep it private. All right, so private void on trigger collider other. So we want to check if the collider, which is called other, is the player. So we're going to do a check if other item. It is tagged. Okay. If other dot tag is equal to player, we're gonna do the thing. So we're gonna deal damage. All right, so now what do we put in here? Once we know if the other collider is the player, then we want to access the player health and stuff script. Okay, which means we have to set this reference equal to this particular script. So we would say player health and stuff faz is equal to other dot get component these things, and it's called player health and stuff. Now whenever we want to access player health and stuff, we can simply use the abbreviated version, faz. So now we go faz dot. And what did we call the deal damage script? Was it just deal damage? It was take damage. Take damage. Now, as you can see, it's upset at us because it requires an integer. So we're going to create an integer, public int, and we're going to call it damage. You can call it whatever you want. So this could be like, it could be anything. It could be Squidward if you wanted. But I'm going to call it damage just so I know what it is. And then we put it right there, damage. Oh, sorry, I was being silly there. You just end it like that. All right. Now, let's test this out. If we create another sword right there, and for now, we shall just leave the collider, the capsule, what the heck? There's supposed to be a capsule. Where's the capsule? Oh, capsule is active. Okay, well the capsule was supposed to be inactive in the prefab. We'll fix that really fast. And now we set it active in this one particular. Hit play, and oh, one more thing. We got to give it a damage value. So let's say 10. So every time we walk into this capsule, we should take 10 damage. So there's our sword right there. And we walk in, boom. You can see our health bar just went down. We walk in again, boom. Yeah, working perfectly. So, what is the next step? Well, there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to be able to determine what the damage value is based off of our character's stats. But we have yet to make, we have yet to even give our character stats, so we're not going to do that. Then we also are going to need to make it so that when we're actually swinging a sword, like that, the capsule turns on and it turns on so that it damages whatever we hit. But we would also need to make sure that that our own capsule doesn't damage ourselves. So let's do that. We need to, so we can add an extra check right here. And we can simply say other dot transform dot parent dot get component. Oh, not parent. We want the root, I believe. Get component, player, health and stuff. Oh wait, if other dot, oh, I just realized this would not go here. Or I mean, I guess it technically could, but we would want to put that check inside of this check. So if other dot get component health damage, not health damage, we want player health and stuff, is not equal to transform dot root. Actually, transform dot root dot get component player health and stuff. Okay, let me explain what this does. So this checks other. Other is the thing that has entered into the trigger. Others player health and stuff script, this thing, does not equal the player health and stuff script attached to the player that is holding the sword. So the transform.root basically means you check this right here. So we have this sword, which is a child somewhere down here in the skeleton. Somewhere down here is this sword. I guess I can search for it. This one. So this sword would go and check this transform all the way at the top, collider change, which is what I've called my player. He would check this transform if this player health and stuff script was equal to whatever player health and stuff script was inside of the trigger at that particular moment. And If it is not, which is what this exclamation mark means, then it'll deal damage to the other player or the other thing. Now, one way to slightly optimize this is to add in the start function, void start, we're going to want to find another, we're going to want to find this in the start function right here. We're going to want to basically move this into here and cache this as another variable. So we could call it var. Oh, maybe we can't. So we're going to want another player health and stuff, and we'll call this our player. And we're going to set our player equals, actually, we don't want that. We're going to want to set it equal to what we just made down here. So copy that and paste it right there. And then we do this. Then we switch that to our player. Anyway, now, why is this better, you might be wondering? Well, because the way we just had it was every time this thing was called and we actually were hitting a player, we would have to, the script would have to go and explore basically to find and figure out, is this the player health and script attached to the sword that we're holding and the sword that's in use. And it would have to figure it out every time this thing was called. But by putting it in the start function, basically it can skip figuring out where this is located because it already knows. It found it at the very beginning and it only has to do it once. At least that's my understanding of it. I could be wrong. Plus, this variable will be useful later on when we're determining stats and stuff, I think. Actually, it won't, but whatever. All right, now we can safely go to this sword that we're holding and turn on the capsule. Actually, we'll leave it off so that we can turn it on and test. So we're holding a sword. Our player is inside of the capsule. And we'll set the damage to 10 just so that we can tell if we're actually taking any damage. Turn it on, nothing happens, which is exactly what we want. And we walk into the other sword and we do take damage, which is also exactly what we want. All right, so everything is working as it should. Now, the next important thing. We have a couple of options. We could continue working on the sword. so that when we swing it, it actually triggers it actually turns on the capsule to deal damage. Or we can move on to stamina, getting stamina to work correctly, so that when we swing our sword, we actually use a bit of stamina. Or we could start working on how magic's going to work. I don't think we're going to get to magic in this episode because magic is slightly more complicated than these other two. Okay, let's finish up the sword. So we're going to get this sword to actually turn on its capsule when we swing like that. And then we'll move on to stamina. All right. Now, the way we do this, how can we do this? We are going to make use of something called animation events. So, let's find out, how do we get our animator? So, we have the animation, we have the animator. And I believe what we want is the animation. Yes, that is what we want. And let's go to our player. Player prefabs. Prefabs. Here's our player. Exit out of 2D mode. And we want to go to our player himself. Kind of turn off gizmos so that it's easier to see. And now, let's see. If we click on him, what do we have? Here's what we want to do. We open up our animation window, as you can see, and it's pretty complicated. This is the idle animation, so just our character standing around. We don't want that. We want our attacking animations. So we have slash left to right, slash right to left, and we have spin sword attack. So let's start with slash left to right. And right here, it looks like we already have an animation event. And it's called Return to Sword Idle. This event is used for something else. Okay, so I'll show you how to make other types of events. So we're going to add an event here. And we're going to add an event. What is this? Oh yeah, okay. And we're going to add an event at the end. These events are events. Yes, they are events. So for every event, we can attach a function, a void. We can attach one of these things, something like this. So let's find a script really fast that could fit the bill of controlling a sword. Main melee controller. Okay. I already have a script made. But if you don't, then you can simply make, well, assuming you're this far, you should have a script that controls animations already. So just find the equivalent script. It doesn't matter what script you put this in. All that matters are the voids. So we need two voids. Public void begin attack, or we should say begin damage. And we have another void. Public void. Be sure that they're public. because the animator needs to be able to access them. And end damage. And all these two are going to do is they are going to set the collider active and inactive. So we're going to need a reference to the collider. So I'm going to go to the top, and I'll put it at the bottom of my reference section. We're going to want a public transform. It can be a game object or a transform. Either way works. Public transform sword. Sword collider. Or sword trigger, actually, because it's a trigger, not a collider, technically, I think. Now, if you have different weapons, like you can switch out to a different weapon, then this won't be so simple, but we'll keep it simple. So we're assuming you only have one weapon out at a time. This collider will be that particular weapon. So begin damage. All you're going to do is say trigger. What was it called? Had trigger in it. Sword trigger. Sword trigger dot set active. Okay. I lied. It does matter. This would be better as a game object. So sword trigger dot game object set active and true. And sword trigger dot game object dot set active equals false. This is basically what we're doing. We would use this void at the beginning of our animation, wherever it is. We'd use it here, and then we'd use the other one here. Now, because I'm a fancy know-it-all coder and I'm very, very smart, apparently, I'm going to do the cool coding way of doing it, or the cool smart guy way of doing it. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to keep it simple. All right. Now I have to remember how to attach events to these things. Oh, there it is. Okay. What are we looking for? We are looking for start damage, I believe. Begin damage. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So we click this bad boy, whoosh, and we're looking for begin damage. Ah! Begin damage right there. And then we go to here, whoosh, and we say end damage. Right there. Okay. And now we should, let's see, can we copy this and go to our other one? Yes, we can. And then we can paste it. And we can go to our last one and paste it. Copy the second one, go to our second animation, paste the event, and finally the third one. And damage. All right, and now all that's left is to go to here, find our main melee controller, sword trigger. We are looking for the sword, so we can just simply type it in, then sword plane, exit out of that so that we can continue looking into it. And that is the thing we want. Go back here, and just a little tip. If you do not want to encounter the problem that I just did, which is when you're searching around for an object and clicking on stuff, and the inspector changes, kind of annoying, what you can do is you can click this lock right there. And now when I go here, I can click this capsule and the inspector stays locked to the collider change object. All right. So the sword trigger, that is this capsule. All right. Nice and good. And yeah, although I don't usually lock it very often because I always forget that I've locked it, and then I end up adjusting like another object, changing its scale, making it all wonky, and then I'm like, why isn't my object changing? It's because it's locked. All right, now we should be able to go back and let's split our screen. Enable gizmos. Give me the hierarchy. Am I still in the... No. Okay. Give me the sword. Let's bring that down. Then sword plane. That's the right one. Yes. Exit out of that. And that capsule. Now we should be able to see it if it... All right. And then I believe Shift F allows us to focus in on it. Now we go back to our game view. All right. And we swing. Boom. Capsule turns on and off when we're done with the animation. Now you can see when we kind of chain it into a bunch of attacks, it doesn't seem to be working for some of them. See right there? It's turning off too early. And that is simply because, if we go back to our animator here, that goes there, this goes here, and window, animation, animator. This is our animator for our player. If we go to our attacking layer, what happens is when you have multiple animations, so this is the one we were just doing, slash left to right, this chains into another one, or even to itself, which is what any state means. So it can chain, so slash left to right can go into any state, including itself, which is how it kind of repeats. But anyway, what happens is here at the end, you can see it's using spin attack as an example. It spins and then it has this period where it kind of like smoothly goes into the next animation, which means down here, if we go into our slash left right, down here at the end of the animation, these keys are sort of cut off slightly, they don't work quite as well. And so sometimes animation events like this won't be visible, or they won't do anything. So all you need to do is just move them in a little bit. The exact points you should move them, I do not know. I'm just going to move them in, what is that, 0.03? Something like that. Just enough so that they don't like get messed with. And now, hopefully, when we go back into this, Shift F. Let's zoom out a little bit so that we don't get too seasick. Hit play. Yep, there you go. It stays, collider stays on through the majority of the animation. Just at the very end and the very beginning is when it turns off. Alrighty. I don't know if it's going to be laggy for you guys, but now it works. That's the important part. Okay. So, now it is time to move on to stamina. So, I'm going to save our progress so far. Now, stamina usage is going to be very similar to what we just did with using animation events. Basically, we're going to go into, let's say, our attacks, and we're going to add another event that just drains a little bit of stamina from us. And I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Every attack is going to drain the same amount of stamina. Now, you might want me to show you how to like drain stamina while you're running. I am not going to do that. For two reasons. One, it's kind of